All right, good afternoon, all. And once again, thank you all for allowing me to be here. I thank you all for also being here with us to learn a little bit and share among our knowledge a little bit of the book of Isaiah. This week, we're going to be looking at Isaiah chapter 38, and it's titled Hezekiah's Illness.
Yes.
Um, our main focus is to always look to the Lord all the days of your life, which is part of the theme of today's learning. Before we move on to what we have for Isaiah today, we're going to look at Isaiah chapter 37 so we can do a little bit of a recap and we can remind each other of the learning lessons of that chapter. So in Isaiah 37, we learned that Jerusalem was going to be delivered. Okay, so there was the title of it was Jerusalem's deliverance foretold by Isaiah through a vision that he received from the Lord. At that time, Jerusalem continued to be at the foot of the Assyrian army. They were under threat of conquer. They continued to press on. They were at the gates of the city. That's what we learned in Isaiah chapter 37. That's where the chapter sort of begins. We learned that Hezekiah then, after doing certain things that actually failed in chapter 36, in chapter 37, he actually turns his attention to the Lord. He actually adopts a mentality of humility. He dresses up in sackcloth, and we learn that that is part of the humility part of it, and actually reverence to actually believe and seek of the Lord. He commands his higher officials to dress in sackcloth as well, and he sends for Isaiah to actually seek guidance and wisdom through Isaiah of God. All right, Hezekiah prays a lot throughout the chapter, which, by the way, lines up perfectly with the themes that we've been discussing in today's sermon. So I believe that God definitely is here today because he has lined that up all very well. We learned that Sennacherib, okay, I think I butchered that enough, but Sennacherib is going to fall. There is an actual prophecy that Isaiah is revealed, that Isaiah receives from God, where Sennacherib's fall is going to be destined by the sword, the same sword that he actually uses in a way to actually conquer all these places. Is by the sword he reigns, by the sword he will die. In there, we learned that in his prophecy there is going to be a defeat of the Assyrian army, and we know that the angels are commanded to actually kill 185,000 of the Assyrian camp. And this is happening at the foot of the entrance of Jerusalem. And we know that then Sennacherib actually turns around in the face of this great death that overtakes his camp. He actually lives in the same way that he comes in, which is part of the initial prophecy that Isaiah reveals on how the Assyrian army would be defeated. We also learn towards the end of the chapter that the Assyrian king is actually killed by his own sons, and he is beheaded. We learned that, and we discussed that in our last chapter. He's beheaded by one of his own sons, giving full completion to the prophecy that Isaiah had given about his death. Okay, this leads us to Isaiah chapter 38, and in this chapter, we're going to discuss a little bit of what happens throughout the chapter. Then I'm going to just present the audience with a few questions, and then I want to highlight on a few takeaways that we want to carry on with us. If you guys have any questions for me towards the end, we can actually discuss those as well. So at the beginning of the chapter, we learn that Hezekiah is presented with a terrible news that he is going to die. He will die, Isaiah tells him, and that he will not survive of illness that he's presented in front of him. He also tells him, put your house in order because you're going to die and you're not going to survive this. And just to give a little bit of an idea, try to look up what type of illness he had. And judging by the text that is there, there's no clarity in or consensus on what type of illness he had at that time, but there is some thought that the bubonic plague perhaps was one of the things that he could have had. I read in one area that it could have been a form of leprosy because he talks about boils in the skin. But the point is that it is a very deadly illness. And just to give you an idea, there are certain people, certain, I guess historians, if you will, that put the survival rate of the bubonic plague was, the death rate was as high as 75%. Could be between 30 to 75%. So it's a very, very deadly plague. And this is what is believed, some believe that the king Hezekiah actually had at that time, okay? When he learns of this, the first thing that he does is turns around and pleads to the Lord. How does he do that? He prays. He turns around to the Lord. We learn in the chapter in around verse 2 that Hezekiah, the first thing that he did is he turned to face the wall and he prayed to God. He started pleading to God and he cried, okay, to God. He tells him, God, I have walked in front of you and I have lived a righteous life according to your beliefs. And he is pleading with God, and in a moment of sadness, he even cries. We learn later on that Hezekiah receives some type of mercy from God, and he's revealed through Isaiah to him. He actually tells him, listen, I have heard your prayers. I have heard you plead. I have seen you cry. And it pleases me that you receive an extra 15 years of life. And this is what is given to Hezekiah. Isaiah reveals to him that he has another 15 years, but he actually has to follow something, a protocol first. He instructs them to actually prepare some type of a remedy and put it in his boils and put it in his body. I did a little bit of research of what this was. I actually asked Diana to look that up. And imagine like a home remedy that is prepared out of figs. Using figs is the fruit that is referenced in there, and to put it in his body. My belief is that, judging by the text, the text that is given, it seems that Isaiah has told them like, oh, he will live another 15 years, and then tells him to actually prepare this remedy. So judging by that sequence of events, I believe that the actual command of putting this potion on his body was more in a ritualistic format, because he already had revealed them like, listen, you're going to receive an extra 15 years of life. And I think this was just in part of reverence, of, let's say, just of a test, if you will. It is what I gather, what I decipher from reading the context of this chapter. Okay. Towards the end, after this happens, we learn that Hezekiah again turns around and does what? Praise in acknowledgement. Yes, I will do this. Surely I will follow your way, he says. And he also acknowledges one important lesson in here. And this is something that is very important and cultivates actually what the true message of this chapter is. He tells him, surely it was for my own benefit that I had to go to this offering, that I had to go through this anguish, he tells him. This is Hezekiah's prayer to God. He actually, some text actually says that this is formed into a psalms of thank you to God. In the face of all of this, Hezekiah actually takes the opportunity to acknowledge all the goodness, even within the bad, because there's a lesson to be learned there for him. So that was very important to me, and I think it's the true essence of what this chapter is about. So some of the questions that I have for the audience now are going to be presented. I don't see very well everybody, so please feel free to just jump in, and we can try to discuss as a group. They're very simple questions. If you glance at the chapter, you should be able to answer some of them, and then we can actually meditate upon them. So the first question that I want to pose to the audience, and again, I cannot see you very well because it's a very small window, just jump in and answer. What do you think is the illness that Hezekiah has said? I already have discussed this. What do you think it is?
Leprosy and bubonic plague.
Okay, leprosy and or demonic plague. Thank you very much, Diana. Guys, you're muted over there. So Titi, just to make it a little bit more interactive, if you could please unmute the computer. I would appreciate it.
It's okay. Se escucha
Okay.
ya.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. What do you think he was given a sickness? I highlight this, and this is the most important thing. Tio Rene, what do you think he was given this sickness?
I mean, does he say that he was given that sickness?
Well, it literally tells you that he would not survive and that he had boils in his body, and that Isaiah literally in verse 1 tells you, you will not recover.
Yeah, he would die.
Do you think he was sick?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I believe he's given that sickness so that his faith can increase, because those of us that truly have faith, when we go into a big crisis in our life, we run to God instead of God. So he did what a man of faith should do. He ran towards God. Amen. Increase.
Thank you very much. That was very good. But go ahead. I believe Ralph and then the minister.
I think this chapter is a beautiful story about mercy, you know, the mercy of the Lord. Yeah, you know, that he took mercy upon this man and giving another 15 years. So God is speaking through that, you know.
I like that very much, Theo Ralph, and I like that. I just want to make sure that I build on a little bit on that. I believe that you're totally on the mark with that, but building on that, I believe while there is that in the essence of the message, I believe that there's an overlapping message that perhaps needs to be highlighted more in this, and we're going to touch upon this a little bit more as we go along, but you are on the mark with that. Go ahead, the minister.
Jesus was walking with his disciple, and there was a man that was sick, and they asked Jesus, Master, who was the one who sinned, him or the father? And he said, that doesn't matter, that it was so that the name of God would be praised, and the man was healed. So likewise, when you ask the question, that's what came to mind. Hezekiah had to go through this. So there are millions of people, including us today. Listen to this. This was written more than 2,500 years ago, right?
Actually, if I'm not mistaken, this was written 600 to 700 before Christ was born.
2,700 years. So that many people will read this today, and we have faith and know that when you seek, as the preacher was preaching, if you have faith and proclaim with your mouth that you will be healed, like Hezekiah, you could be given another 15 years.
Yes.
Also, there is a big lesson here.
Yes.
Us, Christians, have to prepare and leave things in order when we're gonna die.
Very
In the household, they don't have a penny to be buried, and they live, not only they die emotionally, and they leave a burden financially. I think that's very irresponsible. And this is a book that teaches that we must prepare our house, leave things in order with our kids, wife, leave money so that we could be buried. You know, that's part of what this book is teaching when he said, prepare your household because you surely will die.
Yeah. I am glad that the minister touched on that, because I didn't highlight it throughout my synopsis of the chapter. However, this is a very important lesson. While the minister touches up on a big one, let's say, that we're facing today, where we are not prepared to get our lives in order. And it's interesting because this is speaking to me in many levels. Literally yesterday, I was actually speaking with a lawyer and putting them on retainer, or aligning that to put them on retainer, because it's like, oh, we got a detailed, formatted will, if you wish, about how things are to be distributed should anything happen to my wife and I, and how the children are going to be covered, who is going to be the person responsible for such and such, how the kids are going to be cared for, and so far and so on, right? So we are called to do these things of people of God, as the ministry is highlighting, because it's of extreme importance. And this is the first lesson that we receive in this chapter, because it's on verse 1. Actually, on verse 1, that it tells us that Isaiah tells Hezekiah, listen, get your house in order. But beyond that, minister, I think you would agree with me that another part of getting your house in order is making sure that your house operates in unison with the teachings of God, making sure that your children, your offspring, and or your wife, your mate, is actually in alignment with the things of God. The spiritual preparation of your household perhaps is of more importance. And I think that that was something that actually was speaking to me when I said, oh, get your house in order because you're surely going to die. As head of the household, I am called to make sure that this house operates in the correct way, in accordance to the things of God. So, minister, I think you would agree with me that that's probably or even more important that when we talk about getting a house in order, right?
That's correct. That's correct, Dave.
All right. We learned that, as I mentioned before, I put already the question and the answer. How did God tell Hezekiah through Isaiah that he will be healed? He tells him to make this type of remedy and rub it on his body, to actually put it directly on the boils on his skin. I believe again that this was done in a form of a ritual because this comes after the revelation that you will receive 15 years already. This is almost like a, how would I put it, like a test of let's say his obedience to God's command. That's what I believe, because in reality he was already revealed with the fact that he will receive 15 years. We're gonna do one more question here. At the end of the chapter, what did Hezekiah ask for? And this is very important because this is the part that I want us to
A
analyze.
sign,
What?
a sign,
A sign of what?
to know that we'll go to. the Lord.
He asked it, thank you, Diana. He asked for a sign that he will go up to the Lord's temple.
Amen.
What do you think this is? What do you think is the meaning of that, minister?
Well, that he would be in the presence of the Lord. You got to understand that depending on which part or which which religion you belong to. For example, the Sadducee don't believe in resurrection, but the Pharisees did. So you have to be careful. But one thing that they want to do is go to the presence of the Lord, you know. So to me, what he asking is salvation, because many, even Job knew that he said, I know my Redeemer lives.
Yeah.
Job
Yeah.
did. That's the oldest book of the Bible. So they want to go to God's presence, you know, to the
Yeah. So when this great man, thank you, minister, because when these great men in the Bible, we learn time and time again, are faced with, let's say, the end of life, or not even, let's say, a great challenge or anything like that, they also think of in a form of what the legacy will be, right? And there's no greater legacy than to say, oh, listen, he was taken and be in chap there with the Father, so in the temple of the Lord. I believe that that's why Hezekiah actually, the importance of, let's say, putting this towards the end of the chapter is the fact that he is memorizing and he's reflecting on what the legacy will be. Not only that, as the minister mentioned, all the great men that perhaps have come before him, including David, who also goes through his own part of asking God, oh, let me be with you, God, up there with you in the temple. I believe is the importance of why this is included at the end of the chapter in there. Some of the takeaways now that I want to discuss are very simple, okay? What do you think is the most important takeaway that we have of this chapter, Uncle Ralph?
Well, I think it's like I mentioned before, it's a beautiful story of faith and praise. And when we have faith and we ask, we're gonna get it from the Lord.
Amen. Amen. Titi, actually, you had your hand up or something?
No, I was waving goodbye.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes, dear Ralph. I gotta tell you, the takeaways are three takeaways. Pray.
Yeah.
Okay?
And
So
faith.
that way you will be able to receive the message of today aligns very well with this, actually, with this chapter. You see in here, we learned that Hezekiah was faced with death and he prayed. He started praying in the face of adversity. He just turned around and started weeping and praying to God, okay? Even at the end of your life, you should always pray. Pray when you receive instructions just like Hezekiah did as well. Once he received instruction, he actually turned around and said, surely I will comply with this, surely I will do this, and surely I will definitely give you the glory of God. Pray when you get answers from God, okay? You got to not only pray to make sure that the message you receive is from God, because oftentimes we, as the minister has made sure to embed in us always, you got to make sure that things are of God. If things are of God, you're going to be at peace with your decisions that you make, okay? That's one sign. There's a lot of people that say, oh, God spoke to me and said it in my head. Sometimes people, let's say, receive the message in different ways, but oftentimes when you are at peace, I think that's a great way of knowing, let's say, that the message is from God. So make sure you pray for that peace that comes with the message of God. So that way you can make sure that the message comes from God. And once you receive the answer, you got to pray again. Pray out of gratitude. Pray out of gratitude like Hezekiah did, not just for the good of receiving an extra 15 years of life, but also for the adversity that was given to you in the face of death, because guess what? It's for your betterment, I believe. And I'm going to close you with the words that actually of our message today is what you profess with your mouth, when this case prayer from your heart shall come to pass. Because
Abel, I got a quick question for you.
Go ahead.
I don't know if there is any significance, but it says in this chapter that God pushed back the shadow of the sun 10 feet back on the stairs. Is that any significance to that? Or I don't know.
Well, when it comes to the shadow, I believe that it's talking about in the concept of death. Okay, and I believe the pushback of the shadow is an actual symbol of how his life was extended. So when we actually talk of death, we also think of oftentimes of darkness and so forth, so on, which a shadow represents. So when we see reading here that a shadow was pushed back, we actually see the extension of his life.
Yeah, because that's it. It was a sign that God gave to Hezekiah. Yeah, that's good.
I believe I think the answer suffices, right, Minister? I that's what I gather from that.
Thank you.
When Rob asked that question,
Thank you.
the 10 of Joshua come to mind, where he said that